Okay. Oh. You did unmute us now?
Yep, you're good.
All right. At 7:30, we will call this meeting of the Public Works Committee to order. This meeting was posted in the local newspapers and media outlets as is required. Correct, Mary?
Over to Jeff too.
Thank you. We're all here except for Will. Continue with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, consent agenda, all we have is the minutes from the last meeting. Any questions or comments on that? Or if not, we'll look for a motion.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Motion for Marcy.
Second.
Second for Doug. Any questions or concerns? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll move on to the discussion items, which I believe Scott can cover if we have any questions, anything in it we want to discuss.
I don't have anything. If you want me to highlight it, I can, but
It looks smaller than usual.
what's that? Oh, the highway department monthly update?
Yeah.
Well, we got rid of some of the stuff that was kind of the, some of the like routine stuff in there to kind of make it more pop up as being discussion items. So
Okay.
more relevant information, if you will. So trying to keep it like just what happened there in the last month and not stuff that's ongoing. You wait till that stuff is actually finished, or unless you're asking for stuff updates on it for the highway department one.
Yeah. It says continuing progress on West Bend and Kewaskum's 2050 plans. How
Yeah.
far are you with those?
Pretty far, I would say. I want to give a shout out to our IT department. They made the application for it. We met with the city of West Bend, I believe that was last week, Monday, Tuesday, something like that, early on in the week. Friday it was. And that was Friday. Time flies. Asked for some changes from IT department, and they made them already. And so that'll be going live today. We reached out to the city of West Bend, and hopefully we'll be able to meet with them to finalize the mapping, the plan, stuff like that next week. We got a really good handle on the report. So we're hoping by the end of April to have it all locked down. It's really back on between us and the city of West Bend once this goes live, hopefully today. The IT program manager was out yesterday to put it live, but hopefully we'll do that today. And we'll meet with them and get this thing hopefully wrapped up and finalized. So we're really ecstatic about how the program's working out. And we got two, I'll call them guinea pigs, if you will, going through the first time. So there's some growing pains with the program. When we did it originally at the county level, it was one big massive spreadsheet. When you change one thing, you got to change everything in this massive spreadsheet. Now it's all done by a computer application. So you can lock some roads in, change some roads in, change dollar amounts, and not have to worry about it, because imagine a big spreadsheet, you change $1 amount, like, all right, now you got to change everything else, everything that moves up a year, moves back a year. It was quite daunting, but this application makes it a relatively smooth process. So we're really hoping for that. And again, what you'll see later on in the program, we'll talk about going to one of the townships. We're really hoping that with this new application, we don't have to wait and just do 2 a year. We're really hoping that with towns, it'll be an easier system. With the cities and villages, we took into account sewer, water, and storm sewer, and the age of those utilities and when they just paved the roadway versus when they got to do sewer and water utility work underboard the roadway. So it's very complicated to make the computer program, and thank gosh we have a really good computer programming department here in the county to make that happen. But the towns, we think, will be a lot easier because a lot of those decision points just won't be there. Basically, decision points for towns are going to be any roads that you think you need to widen or expand in the future. And that's it, right? Because you don't have to work water and all that kind of stuff. So that'd be hopefully a lot easier to do. We might be able to knock out several in a year.
Thank you.
Kind of a little parallel to that, but federal funding for rebuilding Highway M, have we heard anything on that?
No, the applications are due April 1st. We've got the applications complete. We're waiting on the state of Wisconsin to change what's called a Whistler map. There was an error on County Highway M. They had our section and Wausaukee County sections flipped around. Ours is from Fry State Road north a mile and a half, and Mequon's is from Pioneer down a mile and a half. They had to switch. So we're waiting for them to switch because we have to supply a map, and they have to supply the DOT's Whistler map to them. And so to make sure, so we're working on that. They made some modifications on Monday. They weren't quite right, so we're going back and hopefully we'll get those things knocked out. So yes, we are actively applying for those funds.
A shame if that triples off.
It won't.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I assume that when we get done with the first Kewaskum West Bend plan, we're gonna be reaching out to the other communities then at that point?
Yeah, that's on your agenda.
We're already working.
Yep, that'll be on your agenda in a couple of minutes.
Yep. Perfect.
Did you want to discuss anything with transit at all, or do you want to hit one of these at a time?
I just had a comment on the plans with the city's village, because I've been working with Scott and his team. There are so many moving parts on this program and application that I'm amazed on how they put this together and the work that went into this. Like you said, you can change one number and it'll adjust the whole program 30 years out.
Awesome.
It's incredibly powerful.
It's,
Really looking forward.
I'm amazed on it. And
That's a good question.
Is that-
Copyright it?
The program?
Can you do
That's an IT question.
Yeah.
So that we've talked about copyrighting different things in the past. When we provide it to other communities, we usually copyright stuff. So like our intersection analysis and stuff like that. So there's a process for that. Their decision.
And we'll get to that when we get to that.
Sure.
I can't say enough on how great they've been to work with Scott and his team and the IT department here. This has been a great partnership. So I appreciate their hard work.
So it's been so easy that you're gonna do it again with the town of Farmington.
That'll be much easier.
Okay, moving on to transit ridership.
I just want to point out, I did a little paragraph up on the top this time. We are hoping for an increase in ridership for the Commuter Express in March and April. I'm sure you're all familiar with the rising fuel prices. There's construction on North Leg of the Zoo interchange. If you haven't been down to Milwaukee lately, there's construction down there. And we just actually got a report yesterday that about a third of the businesses are back to full-time in the next month or two. The rest of them plan on doing, if they are coming back to full-time, are looking at doing that. The other thing I should have put in the report was our advertising is up as well. You have a billboard on southbound 41, just south of the 41-45 split. We did have ads in the Olympics. We had ads in the Marquette games. We're going to have ads in the Brewer games that are coming up. So thankfully their season's starting. We'll start those ads as well. So it's kind of one of those things. If they don't come now, when will they come?
Yeah.
Right. When you look at all those factors, everything is laying in a nice roll for us right now, right? We'll be actively advertising in the fuel prices and the construction, and then people being back to work. So we are anticipating hopefully a rise back up. And March is typically one of our higher months if you look kind of across the board. So we'd be anticipating that kind of going forward. The other thing to point out is that in the future, our MOU with the Wausaukee County with crossing transit lines, believe it or not, will be up for that pilot program, be up in a year. So that'll be in July, I believe it is.
Yeah, the MOU is up in July.
So that'll be coming to the next, not to you right now, but after the elections. So just something to think about too, kind of going forward, that we haven't forgot about it. It's been a year and we'll certainly give you more reports on that. We've given you several reports basically quarterly for that, how it's been going, but we'll do more updates on that.
I noticed that the shared ride taxi is down slightly. Any ideas on why that is?
We had some driver concerns. Was that in January and February?
Well, yes, there were driver issues. January and February, we definitely had a huge wave of COVID go through staffing and also our riders So, and I mean, we're going to actually just keep a lookout of that and see, make sure that it's been more of these issues that we can't control, and that we're not losing riders to things like customer service and availability. So that's, yeah, that was, we expected it to be low absolutely in January. February was a little bit more surprising, although we did have a day where we shut down the service during the ice storm. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on the track on the ridership for shared ride taxi and look for the trends in the next few months.
There are some new rules now. A while ago already was COVID with the latest variants. How long do they have to be out when they, you only have to quarantine for like 5 days now, right? Is that correct? I'm
Yeah.
asking.
Yes. Yeah, and we still have to wear masks too, because we're a federally programmed, so we still have to wear masks on those
Right.
services as well, both of those services, so
And that's, just for a few more weeks.
hopefully.
Yeah, well, the CSA had extended it to get through spring break travel.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, having none, we'll move on to action items, the jurisdictional transfer of County Highway F and Wausaukee Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we brought this forward as a discussion item several months ago. I don't recall the exact month, looking at it. In the interim, the Village of Germantown did take this up at their village board level, and it did pass it. So you'll see a copy of the passed resolution. I hope that provided the right, it's signed, the right copy over to the clerk's office. So it was signed, obviously, by the Village of Germantown, so they are obviously interested in it. The next steps would be, if you so choose to approve it today, we'll go to our county board as presented, or potentially amended if you so choose. And then obviously we'd work on that final agreement with them going forward, the agreement behind the scenes. Obviously you see the dollar amount that's in there already, but we're looking at probably like an October 1st date of the official transfer. That way we would actually do the maintenance this year yet, right? Any shouldering or anything like that this year to make sure that everything's up to snuff, vegetation mowing. The October 1st deadline is important because what it does is by having them have the jurisdiction by October 1st, it then goes on their books for general transportation aid. If we wait till after that, then they lose out a potential year of general transportation aid on that stretch of roadway. So it's very important we hit that date, and they're open to that date. They realize that it's also a good date of snow plowing, right? That generally speaking, before October 1st, you don't get a lot of snow. So if you wait till November 1st or December 1st, it's just more challenging, especially like at December 31st, when I think we did Highway G and River Road and it started to snow. It's like, all right, are we plowing until midnight and then you're taking over? So it's a good date for everybody. And that subdivision, that Grandwood subdivision on Highway F, just east of the railroad tracks, east of Pilgrim, is full-blown construction right now. And they just applied for like a water permit. And so instead of having them come to us and the village, right, this is one thing we could just say, if so approved now, we would then say, just talk to the village, get their permit approval, and let's move on. That way, they're one of the benefits, right, of them not going to two different municipalities for two different permits and the time it takes to do that.
And to be clear, this committee allowed that new subdivision to
Yes, you approved that.
happen because
This
they
was-
have two driveways and we don't allow two driveways. So
Yeah.
that's purely a Germantown thing.
Right. So we did include the map up there. If you remember, they are taking 2.6 miles of County Highway F. We're taking 1 mile of Wausaukee Road. So it is a swap, if you will. Again, we're taking less mileage and paying them. And Wausaukee Road was recently paved. So we're getting a relatively new road, but we do understand that in the long term, again, probably that 20 to 25 years out, we'll probably have to reconstruct that roadway to the wider section. Right, so Germantown knows that we've got that facing us in the future where County Highway F is already a wider section. If you've been out there, it's got the paved shoulders or gravel shoulders, right? It's a decent roadway.
Yeah, Wausaukee Road, the right of way, you can tell it's
It's
really
like a town.
neck down through there. So
Yes. So we'll be managing that section of roadway going forward, altering our plow routes and stuff. So I think it's one of those where win-win for both municipalities. Again, both municipalities have to agree. This is one thing that neither can push it on each other. They both have to agree, and right now we got one side that's saying yes.
Marcy?
With the transfer, there's the amount for the depreciation of the road. Why are we doing a general fund transfer if we have extra money in the account because of Highway M being pushed off a year?
Yeah, why doesn't that come out of CIP?
We still need that money for next year.
Oh, you're
So-
just carrying
So
it
it's earmarked, so it,
until we
yeah.
know we
You-
have the
right.
grant.
Yes, you earmarked it for M. If I don't have the earmark for M, I'm applying for funds. I gotta have the matching funds. One of the requirements is you gotta have the matching funds set aside. And thankfully, we have that set aside already. We didn't have to go to the board to get, some communities have to go to the board because part of the application is you have the matching funds and you have proof of the matching funds. I have proof of the matching funds of M. If you take those away, and now E as well, I no longer have proof of the matching funds.
All right.
So again, this is one of the conversations that will come back to either your committee or the board. If we do get those funds, but what do we do with those other funds that we had set aside for those projects?
Could we,
Right.
at that point, pay back the general fund if we had that availability? Or do we
It is your funds. You can work on them however you want to work on them. Yes. So it can go a bunch of different ways. Absolutely. Yes. Could it go back to the general fund? Certainly. Was sales tax money, so we have to just look at that to see how that all those pieces play out. So
and the 691,500 is not a number that's cut in stone. It's still open to some negotiation.
I would say there's other stuff that's open to negotiations, like the intersection improvements, stuff like that. So other stuff that they might want us to do. Let's say that, for instance, there was a retaining wall that was failing. They might say, as part of the agreement, we want you to repair that retaining wall. Now, there isn't a retaining wall that's failing. I want to make sure I'm very clear on that. But stuff like that we can certainly discuss it of, kind of like we did with the Highway Y jurisdictional transfer. All of a sudden, hey, the intersection of Goldendale and Freystack came up and said, yep, let's work on it. We'll split it 50-50. So that's part of the agreements that can still come, down the road. That we've got a framework, if you will, and we've done these agreements in the past. So we just start talking about those little things that, their highway superintendent went out there to look at all the culverts to make sure they're all in good working condition and don't have to be replaced. So I believe that report came back as positive, but they haven't told us yet, right? So it's those kind of things where how far down the road do you get? If they decided no, they don't want it at Germantown, and we decided no, we don't want it, right before you get the agreement all in place and get all these things hammered out, knowing. So it's one of those things we kind of wait on. But yes, the agreement's still one thing that's coming down the road yet. It's something we can work on them with.
All right, any other thoughts?
Good.
We have a motion.
Motion to approve jurisdictional transfer.
Did you get that, Mary?
Got it.
Mike?
Got it.
Okay. With no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll pass it on to the full board for approval. So our next item is the 2050 Transportation Network Sustainability Plan for the City of Hartford and the Town of Farmington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you see in front of you a packet. So if you recall, back in 2019, the county approved a 2050 Transportation Network Sustainability Plan for Washington County as one of our strategic priorities. It was the county executive's wish that we would actually extend this to all the municipalities in Washington County over time. We took upon the effort to start with the city of West Bend and village of Kewaskum to look at their municipalities. Again, being a little bit different than Washington County, as both of those municipalities have sewer and water utilities as well, and how that interacts with the transportation plan. If you can imagine, you don't want to replace a roadway and 2 years later run sanitary sewer down the roadway you just did. And so you want to make sure you're looking at both the age and condition of the sanitary sewer and water main, storm sewer as well to some extent, and then compare that to the roadway. And then So the funds available from the roadway funds versus sewer and water funds, because they're usually run by the utilities. And so there's different pots of money as well to reconstruct these roadways. So we looked at those. It's unfortunately taken us a little bit longer time, being that county staff is a staff of two, myself and Josh. And I said a great help to our GIS department, IT department, to creating a program which would really streamline this thing kind of going forward. So we got those two that are just about done. Again, we hope to get those two done by the end of April, as long as we get some good cooperation, which we have been from the City of West Bend and Village of Kewaskum. Where we're at right now is that we got to finalize the plan, and then they got to review it, right, to make sure it makes sense. From a standpoint, you can imagine that as challenging as their road segments are much shorter in the cities and villages, right? Go by blocks. And so you might say, you should do this block this year, skip a block and do this block the same year. Like, well, you missed a block and it doesn't make sense, right? So that's the things we got to work with the city to make sure those connectivity issues are the same, right? It says to do 1 in 23, 1 in 24, 1 in 25 in 3 blocks in a row. Well, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that, right? Because you're doing engineering and all that stuff. It makes sense to do all 3 right economy of scale at one time. So that's the connectivity that we got to work with the city, as well as any projects that might be a little bit different. So I'll take Main Street going south. We want to improve that. To redo Main Street, you got to buy right away, right? South of Myers, I'm talking about, where it's basically a rural section, right? You want to change it to, urban and widen the roadway. Well, there's utilities and right away, all that stuff. A little more than just replacing, curb and gutter down a little residential street. So we worked on that. That's one thing we worked on last week with them, and we got that solved as well. To have those added bigger projects. 18th Avenue is another one to the south, right? The city's working on 18th Avenue, working all the way down towards Paradise. Well, that's more expensive to do than your standard roadway cross section, right? So stuff like that, we had to make sure we added into the program, those kind of one-off projects. Same thing would happen at the town, right? Of a reconstruction project versus repave project, just like ours, right? A reconstruction costs essentially more than just a repaving project. And so same thing going there. So we got those just about completed. We are now working we want to start our first town. We decided to ask in the town of Farmington, and thankfully they requested yes. One of the main reasons is their town chairman was working with the City of West Bend and understands the program and stuff like that. So kind of sees it already, kind of get in the feel versus staff at the towns are not available all the time and full time. We need someone that we can actually work with and kind of get those kind of kinks worked out. So the guinea pig again for the first town, and then kind of work our way into their towns after that, because we just realized that their staff time is not very high availability. At City of Hartford we chose because when we started this program, the mayor from the City of Hartford reached out and wanted to be the first municipality. Unfortunately, we went to City of West Bend and Kewaskum instead, so we kind of made the promise that we would get to the city. It's important for us on the back end that we know the city's process now, working with the City of West Bend, to get the next largest cities done at the same time. And that way, if there's any changes that they can come up with at the City of West Bend to the program, we kind of work, we can work those back in with the City of West Bend, right? And do it while it's still fresh in Josh and I's mind and our IT staffs, how the sausage is made behind the scenes, if you will. So that's why we chose them to be next. And they have a robust GIS system with their mapping system, so we hope it'll be a relatively easy process. In the meantime, we'll start reaching out to those other municipalities to get their data in a format that we can actually utilize for their sewer and water, right? It's very important. It took a while to get, what's the age of it all, right? And the City of West Bend had a great GIS system, and a lot of the information was in there, but there were some gaps. They had to just help us fill in a little bit, right? So we try to figure out how old the water or sewer is. It's very important to this program how old that is. So Village of Kewaskum, we spent a lot of time with them, and we took our GIS site. We had maps from, if you've gone on GIS site, right, you can see the aerial photo from 50 and 60 and 70, right, and 80. They said, okay, this is what the village looked like in 1960. So that's all had sewer and water. This will look like 1970. So that's the new set that was done in 70, right? The doctor staff going, all right, any repairs or stuff has been done in between. So because they didn't have a lot of good records of when stuff went in exactly. So a lot of stuff was just put in by decade, saying, yep, that subdivision wasn't there in 1960, it was there in 1970, so it went into the 60s. It was just, simple as that, and that's what we had to go off of. But we spent a lot of time with them working on their maps to kind of best guess when those systems went into those areas. So it's quite a daunting task, you can imagine, sewer and water and looking at the maps and stuff. So, but I think we got it to where it's a good place right now, and thankfully their public works director has been with the village for quite some time, and in the village, I think his whole life.
Yep.
So, so a lot of institutional knowledge we want to take advantage of. And that's one reason we're also picking the city of Hartford. Their public works director has been there a long time, Darryl Krantz. And so we want to make sure we're taking advantage of his knowledge. Not saying he's leaving. I want to make sure I have no inside information on that. But we want to make sure that we take advantage of that long-term, employee before they decide to retire.
So is Germantown next on the list then?
We don't have a long list. This is kind of it. This is, like I said, we'll start, once we have the city of West Bend and Village of Gloucester done, I think it's important then to give it to those villages to look at to see if that's something they're interested in doing. And then at the same time, let them know what kind of data we need from them, so they know that how much staff time they actually have to, because there is staff time on the city side and villages side. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. There is a significant amount of time. We appreciate the time effort they put in to get that information to us. So that you have that staff and availability to us. I know the village of Germantown had a robust GIS system with all their mapping and stuff like that. They had a surveyor there for many, many years. So I'm pretty comfortable in their data set, but we haven't really seen it yet.
Did we touch on that a little bit with the Freistad Goldendale rebuild and now with the transfer of Freistad Road?
It would all be
That
incorporated.
would have given you some insight into how they work, or not so much?
No, because those areas, so Goldendale had sewer and water through it certainly, but Highway F and Wausaukee don't east of the tracks. So we didn't really get into their sewer and water long range plans and stuff on Highway F and Wausaukee Road. We know they want to do on Highway F, right? That's what they said. And Goldendale, obviously, with the new development going north by Holy Hill, we were definitely involved in that process. That's one of the reasons why we wanted that roadways to have that control over traffic out there, especially truck traffic to the, in that area.
Yeah, that's the reason I asked the question I did before, because when I go to my new district, the town of Addison, southern part of town of Wayne, obviously the town of West Bend, I just was gonna ask those guys if they have any interest in this program.
Yeah.
And to contact you, and I didn't want to jump the gun and say, hey, you can get right on it, if you're a couple of years old.
Yeah.
It could be, it's really, we really need to see when we do the first town, how much information we need from the towns. And right now we don't think it's a lot that we'll need from them. We'll get a lot of the information from the state of Wisconsin. I just read what's called Whistler and Pazer, your Pazer ratings, and how good are those, right? So that's the one thing is, as long as that data is good, it should go really quick and smooth. If that data is poor at the state, if you haven't been updating it, if it says, hey, you should do this road because it says Pazer 2 and the town says, you just paid that 3 years ago, that's going to be a problem, right? And look at, so long as your Pazer data is up to date, and it should be up to date, then it should go pretty smooth. That's the one thing where you have to have the towns to take their eye to it and going, oh, no, that's not right. We shouldn't do that road in 2 years because we just did that road. And that's where you got to really look at that data over.
Which begs the question, who does the Pazer rating or updates that? Is that?
So the towns, generally speaking, do it on their own. They have that capability. Some will have their town engineers do it. You also have the capability of having sewer pack come out and do it. So any town can also contact sewer packs. There's one of, I'll call it 3 options. There's a training manual for it. There's an online course, if you will. It's a PowerPoint. You can go to online, you can go to in-person courses. I think they're starting them up again. They had them. I'm not sure if they still do or not in person, but they were in person. So you can get trained on it as well. Josh Glass, their office, and Ted Dunkey went to that training. So they go out and do it together. So one can drive and one can take notes. So I'm not sure how you have a couple of town representatives here, then maybe they can expand on how their towns do it. I just know through the grapevine.
We've contracted.
You contract.
Yeah, with the engineering firm.
Our road
Supervisor
does
it.
it.
Right. So it's all done differently, right? It's a great thing about being Wisconsin is you can do it, everybody can do it a little bit differently. And so it's the data that we get in and how good is that? And maybe the contractor data is really good, they're on the ball, and maybe not. We'll find out in a couple of weeks.
So I think being through the big complex program, the city, the town level is gonna be, in my opinion, a lot easier because you don't have all the infrastructure and the age. And this program prioritizes roads based on all of those criteria and how you want it prioritized. And at the town level, it's really Pazer rating, most likely. But the villages in the city, it may not be Pazer rating, it might be a little higher Pazer rating, but the utilities are so old, failing and things like that, so there's, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts when you got all that
And
criteria to.
prioritize higher traffic volume roadways as well. So if you have a Pazer of 5 with low traffic and a Pazer of 5 with higher traffic, the Pazer high with the higher traffic went first, right? And that would the city help decide, right? And so that same thing will happen at probably the town level where unfortunately a lot of town roads don't have a lot of traffic volume data. So that's the kind of things we got to kind of put in there with the towns going, right, town, do your best guess. You know, how many cars do you think are on this road? It doesn't have to be perfect, right? But something, right? And we're not certainly, our department's not looking at making money going out there and doing traffic tubes on every town road. We just understand that when you got a feel for it, you live in that town for a long time of, right, this has about, if you know, like, oh, this road has 250 cars today, you can say, okay, that one has 250. Well, this one has less. Well, that one has more, right? Is it twice as much? Is it half as much? And those are the conversations we have to have with the towns too, because a lot of those don't have traffic volumes. And a lot of the subdivisions will just put in like 100 cars a day or whatever it is, you know, relatively low traffic volume versus a town road, which should be done probably first. So that's stuff we do take into account out in the more rural areas. So it'd be slightly different, but like Doug said, much easier, right? A lot less decision points. So we're looking for, to do these next two towns, that's the city of Hartford and the town of Farmington. In our next go around, you saw a draft MOU in there. We just basically took the last MOU and changed the dates and names. So there's not a lot of difference.
On that MOU, in item 11, like the second last line, like where it says you can sever themselves from the agreement if both sides aren't keeping up.
Right.
It's severe and not sever, so
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
minor, but weird word.
Good catch.
Yeah, that's like Marcy,
There's
yours.
a typo in the resolution part itself, also on the bottom of the first page. On the first page, line 45, Town of Farmington, City of Hartford, in the development of the villages in cities transportation. I think villages is supposed to be town.
Yes.
There you
So,
go.
Marcy, I know we were gonna talk about it to amend it. I don't think we have to do a motion to amend it. It's just a typo, so it can just be a friendly amendment and get those changed before it goes up to the board.
Okay,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
any other questions or comments? If not, I would, we have a motion and a second, so all in favor, say aye.
We don't have a motion in a second yet. No motion in a second.
First, second, either one.
John's making the motion.
I'll second it.
Now that we have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Our next meeting date is to be determined. It'll probably be in May, unless Scott finds something we need to deal with in the meantime.
If something pops up on your end.
But, and I'll close by saying, I've very much enjoyed working with all of you the last 2 years. You bring a lot to the table, and I think we've handled our things efficiently here, so thank you all for your efforts. This meeting's adjourned.
Thank you for taking the lead.
Scott.